everybody. We're back. It's another edition of the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. Today, we are both the men in black. It's Friday, and we're deviating a little bit from the quarterback discussion. Believe me, we talked about it. Right, Anwar?
A lot.
we were like, should we do another quarterback video today? Because we could, but we're not. Instead, we're going to ask you to hit the like button. We're going to ask you to subscribe to the channel, and we're going to talk Big 12 realignment in general. The Longhorns are headed to the SEC, Anwar, but the news yesterday from the Pac-12 that they have no imminent plans for expansion, I think, have complicated the exit plans for a Longhorn program that made its move to the SEC, hoping that Texas and Oklahoma leaving would cause chaos. And it feels like everybody involved is like caught on to that. And they've all decided we might do something eventually, never say never, but there's going to be no chaos right now on our watch. And it makes what Texas and Oklahoma do from here really interesting, because the Big 12 and college football as a whole seems to be going out of its way not to give them the easy path.
Because the Big 12 knows it's screwed.
Yep.
Okay. Because the Big 12 knows it's a dead man walking, right? They know the alliance was formed, Catch, and they weren't part of it. I mean, like it's you know, which movie was it that had all the families come together? Was it the Godfather movie? Or one of those mob movies, and all the different families and different boroughs like came together.
Yes, that was the original Godfather. I think it's happened in a lot of mobster movies.
Yeah,
definitely happened in the Godfather 1.
Well, they were left out.
Yeah.
of all of them, they were like, "You're just Staten Island. We don't care about you, right? You're just Long Island. Like, we only care about, the Bronx and Manhattan and Brooklyn, and you're just one of those other boroughs that no one cares about." They know, Catch, that because they've been left out of this alliance, because the other conferences have said, we don't want you. The other conferences said, we're going to do our own thing and form out our packs, and we're going to try to compete against the SEC. And they realize that there's nowhere for them to go. The only thing they can do is try to add in some teams to try to maybe expand a little bit, but it still won't give them the cachet. So that's at that point, that's why the Big 12 is leaking out. Hey, just so you know, from a paperwork standpoint, they can't go anywhere. It's like, all right, you can delay the inevitable. You can stay in this marriage, but they've told you we're getting a divorce. They have told you we're getting a divorce. And they're saying, you know what? According to state law, I think I'm allowed to keep the house. And it's like, all right, you can go all that, but you won't be able to stop this breakup. That's the Big 12 knows it's screwed, and they're going to do anything they can to hang on.
I want to give you a movie metaphor, but it's so obscure that I just might not be able to do it. Have you ever seen the movie The Warriors, the gang movie from
Warriors Come Out to Play?
Huh?
With
the gang movie from the late 70s with
Warriors Come Out and Play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So remember when so Cyrus is dead, right? Spoiler alert for those of you that haven't seen this.
This is some obscure movie reference.
Cyrus is dead, and the Warriors are like on the run back to Coney Island, right? And all the gangs around New York are after them. And they run up on that one gang, and they're like, "You guys are on our territory. Where are you coming from?" And the Warriors are like, "We were at that big gang meeting where all the gangs in New York showed up, and it was a big deal. Like, all the biggest gangs were there." And the guy's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't get an invite." So clearly all of the biggest gangs in New York weren't invited. And the Warriors do that thing where they just kind of look at each other like, "Oh, hell." We got to worry about the feelings of this gang that didn't get invited to a rally where like 6,000 different gangs showed up. I think, yes, that is the Big 12. They're that homeless looking gang in the Warriors that are just like, why are the streets so quiet tonight? I think, look, Texas, it's funny. When you and I were first reporting on Texas, the SEC, you specifically talked to a source that indicated, hey, man, if it takes money, we got money.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
But the hope was that it wouldn't come to that. And I think that this is where we're headed now, which is Texas has been praying that a situation would unfold that would allow them to have their cake and eat it too. And it seems like they're going to have to make a decision at some point, even if it's 2023 at the earliest. That 2 years is going to be worth a whole lot of money. And it may be that they've got to decide how big of a price do you want to pay for your freedom. And it will be interesting if Texas feels a certain way and Oklahoma doesn't. How would the SEC treat? You know what I mean? Like, this is way more complicated than I think Texas fans who are like, let's just pay our way out and YOLO. Like, someone on Orangebloods earlier today said, you guys have no idea what's going to happen in the next 12 months. And I was like, you are exactly right. Yeah. You're right. I don't know.
But, the thing is that what we do know, though, is at the end of the day, Texas and OU are somewhat banking on the Big 12 exploding. I mean, I think that's their bet is, all right, because they know, all right, you guys want us here. We know it's the paychecks and all this other type of stuff. But what they're banking on is defectors. They're banking on, okay, everyone's staying together. There's 8 teams left, and they're all aligned now. But let one team get a parachute to go to another conference, and it's over.
That's why all these conferences are making alliances, and everybody's working together. You know how they say it takes like a community to raise a child?
Yeah.
It takes a community to keep the Big 12 together. And all of these conferences realize if one of us does something that upsets the apple cart, Texas and Oklahoma are playing in the SEC next year. So are you sending out an invite to anybody in the Big Ten? And the Big Ten is like, not me. What about you, ACC? You're going to expand? And they're like, nope. And they go over to the Pac-12 and they're like, are you guys going to do anything? And they're like, for Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, no, we're good. We won't do anything either. And they're like, should we put all this in writing, like into a contract? And the rest like, no.
Correct.
We're not signing anything. But
you know what's funny about the alliance?
We're not going to do anything either.
You know what's funny about the alliance? A day after it was announced that they're all together, the next day LSU now announced it was playing USC in a non-conference game. And it's like, wait a second, we're against the SEC. And USC is like, yeah, but we want to play LSU. So, I mean, this alliance sounds cool, but we don't really hate the SEC. I mean, I don't know how all of them stick together.
No, but the one thing they all have in common is that's why no deal is signed. Because they can all kind of individually do some individualistic things, but the conferences as a whole are not. I think they know Texas can talk about wanting to pay $100 million-ish to go someplace, but that is setting money on fire. Yeah. And for a school that was like, I don't know if we want to get rid of Shaka this year. We could save $3 million if we just wait and see. I don't doubt that there are people at Texas that are like, we're going to be in the SEC next year, by God, and we'll do whatever it takes to get there. But pulling that off and doing it is still something that Texas fans can sit down and be quiet for a second. The rest of college football does not believe they will do it. The Big 12 does not believe that Texas is going to pay $100 million to go to the SEC early. And it certainly doesn't believe that Oklahoma is going to do that. So the Big 12 is banking on they've got 4 years. And they're like, well, Texas can't do anything for 18 months anyway. You guys better say something fast. Texas knows it has 18 months. It could have, it knows it. So, and we now know, based on what the Athletic reported, that by the end of December this year. You and I have been talking about what is this line in the sand moment where Texas is going to have to either do something or get off the pot. In order for them to be in the SEC, according to Big 12 bylaws, per a report from Max Olson in The Athletic, they would have to, by the end of December, announce to the Big 12 their intentions to pay the full 2 years of TV rights added up and give 18 months notice in order to be eligible to be in the SEC by July 1st, 2023. So ready or not, it's coming. And I think the Big 12 doesn't necessarily have to stay together for the next 4 years. It has to stay together for the next 4 months, because then they're going to put Texas in a spot where Texas has either got to say, all right, we're going to pay the money, or they're going to say, now sit the hell down and shut up, right? Either do it, and we all know you've got to do it by, say, January 1st of 2022, or stop acting like you're going to do it. We've called your bluff. Sit down.
I mean, it's like Texas watched one of those Kevin Samuels videos, my main man Kevin Samuels, and Texas is like, man, listen, we're getting divorced, but I just will also let you know I got a girlfriend, and I'm going to be moving in with her as very soon. You can hang on if you want to, but I'm just letting you know we're going.
But what happens when they say, cool, we're going to hang on?
Yeah, well, you can hang on. I mean, and look, at this point, the Big 12, it would behoove them to hang on, right? Because they need the money. They need the money. They're
going to ride that gravy train as long as they can.
Because when they get their new TV rights deal, it's not going to be as lucrative as this previous one. Ain't nobody paying to see Baylor. Nobody's paying to see Texas Tech. And nobody's going to say, oh, man, we need a really good West Virginia SMU matchup. Like, that's going to move the needle. You want to complain about Big 12 games being at 11 o'clock now? Every game will be at 11 o'clock. I think I've said it before. These damn games might be at 3 o'clock in the morning on some damn ESPN Deportes. I've said this before. Like, shit, like, it's not going to be good for them. So, yeah, hold on, because if you're the Big 12, what else do you have, Ketch? What are your options? No one wants your teams. No one wants your league. No, right now, everyone's kind of like, we're cool. To your point, Pac-12, hey, they didn't want none of these teams, and that didn't fit in from an academic standpoint into what the Pac-12 does. Like, that's not. They weren't going to rock with none of these teams. And you said it before, Ketch. And it like anybody in the Pac-12 was like, man, we got to get a pipeline to recruit in Lubbock. No one was thinking about that. They can find 3 stars out west just as easily as they could find 3 stars in East Texas, right? So they're fine with that. And if you're the Big 12, you hold on, get your money, and then you say to yourself, all right, just you milk it for as long as you can, because you don't have options. Period. It's over.
I mean, it really just comes down to, is Texas going to buy their way out of this to start as soon as they legally can? And a lot of Texas fans are like, what are they going to do if Texas just decides to play in the SEC in 2022? It's like, well, lawsuit, I'm guessing. Now, you can say, to hell with it, let's get sued. That's literally the last thing the University of Texas ever wants to have happen. They're terrified of lawsuits. So I don't know. This entire last week, I think, has made it clear that Texas and Oklahoma, they can have their cake. They just can't. It's a weird expression, because if you had cake, why wouldn't you eat it? Like, what else would you do? You want your cake and you want to eat it too. Well, yeah, because it's cake. It's not like a car. You want your car and you want to eat it too. That isn't, it's weird. It's like two different things.
It is a weird expression.
But in a world where everybody uses that expression, Texas has its cake.
Yeah.
If they want to eat it, the Big 12 is not going to just give it to them.
Yeah.
They're going to make them pay for it. And I think everybody at Texas now needs to be prepared for that. If you want to be in the SEC, 2022, based on what we know, seems really hard to pull off at this point because of either the Big 12 bylaws matter or they don't. I actually reached out to Max Olson because I wanted to ask him, did that rule get put in after A&M and Missouri left? Right, because they left, but then everybody signed the new grant of rights after they left. This is why we're here. And I'm wondering when that bylaw was created, because A&M and Missouri didn't have to wait 18 months. Apparently, the new bylaws of the Big 12 say that a team does have to wait. So I reached out to Max. Let me try to get an answer to that. We won't have it in time for this video, but assuming that, I'm curious about that because it falls under the category of things that Texas did under DeLoss Dodds' watch at the end of his watch that just made zero sense. Signing this grant of rights deal the way they did for as long as they did, it wasn't a good idea then. And it's proved to be it's a hindrance to what Texas wants to do, but they signed it. And I had to full confession, I don't know what they've completely agreed to because I have not read all of the Big 12 bylaws. I let Max Olson from The Athletic do that. and then I'll message him and just try to piggyback off of his information.
Last thing though, and Max does a good job. The last thing is, for me, Ketch, is if you're Texas also, you're also saying, all right, I hope you add in BYU. I hope you add in another program. I hope you guys do, because if you find out replacements, then you can let us go, right? I mean, or you can find a way, or you can do some sort of settlement. But Texas and OU are banking on either two things. Either the Big 12 is going to explode at some point, or the Big 12 is going to have to move on and add some other teams and let them out their contract or find some sort of settlement in order to make things go. Because I think they know at some point the Big 12 has to survive. Like they've got to figure out ways to survive. Texas has set itself, the last thing I'll say, Ketch, Texas has set and OU have set themselves up for the next 50 to 100 years. The Big 12 cannot be so short-sighted to just think about the next 4 or 5. They've got to start thinking, how do you survive long-term, especially where you already know how people feel about you. Like, you've got it. Like, you understand no one thinks your conference is worth much at this point. So you better go into survival mode. You better figure out how it is. And you can squeeze Texas and OU and to keep them here if you want to. But if you don't figure out your next moves, you're screwed at the end of the day. So I think Texas and OU, all they have to do, Ketch, sit back and relax and understand at some point, whether it's a year, whether it's 2 years from now, they may not have to cut a check, or maybe the check they cut won't be as significant because the Big 12 has got to find a way to survive.
I mean, at this point, this last thing I'll say, the Big 12 is running the clock on Texas and Oklahoma. It's like one of those basketball games where there's no shot clock. And it's like the team from Hoosiers against that team they beat that just, it never made any sense why that team in Hoosiers lost to the team that beat them, and Hollywood. And if you hold the ball and you're at the top of you're at mid court and you're just watching the game clock wind down, and the whole purpose of your offensive possession is to run a minute off the clock before you do anything. As a defense, what do you have to do? You have to step up. You have to apply pressure. You have to do something. Otherwise, you just let the team run the clock on you. Texas is having the Big 12 run the clock on them right now. At some point, if Texas is going to get accomplished what it wants to get accomplished, it almost certainly is going to have to step up and apply some pressure and either try to force something to happen, a mistake, or try to overwhelm the Big 12 and just say, we're out. Whatever that means, they've got to be ready to do that. That's just an easier thing said. It's like It's like a guy asking his wife for a divorce. I'm going to do that tonight. And then he gets there and dinner's being made. The kids are sitting around the table. And the wife's like, oh, honey, you mentioned earlier today that you wanted to talk about something. What was it? And you're like, oh, there's no big deal. It can wait. It can wait. Like, that's what the Big 12 is doing to Texas. It's just making it really uncomfortable for Texas. And Texas is just going to have to decide just how comfortable it can be with being forced into being uncomfortable. And that is traditionally not been Texas's MO, but it is a new era. They do have new leadership, and maybe this new leadership doesn't give a damn about $100 million. We shall see. For myself and Anwar Richardson, thank you. Thank you all week long watching the videos, liking the videos, subscribing to the channel. We're really working to try to create something fantastic. And to say that we appreciate those of you who joined on early to watch this in its inception and growing into what we hope it becomes, from the bottom of our heart, Anwar and myself, we can't say thank you enough. We love you. We'll see you on Monday. Later.